I realized I probably mentioned this video sometime last week, and then I'm just now sitting down to record it, and right now I have no idea when this is even going to get uploaded. Um, but I wanted to talk a little bit about novel first sentences. Brady mentioned a little something about that on his channel when he did a response to the Gentleman Gamer and his Six-Wood Story Plot Hook tag video. But we had a little discussion about that in the comments on that video. But it's a trap for, not so much for the reader. You pick up a book, you read the first sentence, and you generally keep on reading. Or some of you may not. Some of you may read the first sentence and go, eh. But it's like there's so much pressure put on grabbing the reader or the publisher with that first sentence. It's mind-boggling a little why we put all that pressure on ourselves. And the only thing I can think why is that somewhere we were told that it was important. That if the first sentence isn't good, if the first paragraph isn't good, if the first page isn't good, if the first chapter isn't good, we're either the book is never going to be published or never going to be read. And then why are you even writing in the first place? Well, I guess you could make that argument that, yeah, you need to make a good first impression, but I don't think the good first impression comes on that page. And I don't think the good first impression comes from cover art. Case in point. This is one of the Twilight books. Now, I have seen in the teen section at the bookstore Jane Austen and William Shakespeare. Midsummer Night's Dream and Pride and Prejudice, among others, with art that mimics this cover art, which is basically just a flower on a black background. And I think you even might use the same font. And I think, who are they fooling? You're going to pick the book up. Even if you pick the book up because you think it looks like it might be a Twilight book, if you think, New Moon, written by Stephenie Meyer, if you pick up a book with similar cover art, same font, if you pick it up and you open up and you read it, it's going to be very clear, number one, that it's not a Twilight book, and number two, that it's not even written by the same author. Which, of course, you knew if you read the cover, but once again, the media publishing companies think we're magpies and that we're easily distracted by shiny things. And that isn't to say that I haven't picked up a book just because I thought the cover art looked interesting, because I have. Case in point, this book. When it was new, not this particular book, but when the book was first published in hardback form, I thought the cover art looked interesting in a display of new books at the library, so I picked it up and I read the dust jacket or back cover or whatever. It was in hardback. And I checked it out, and I finished it, and I really liked it, and I went out and I bought this later when it came out in paperback. I just want to say it's probably odd in that hardbound books are awesome because they don't have a lot of the the faults of paperback books. They're a little sturdier, and if you're going to display them on a bookshelf or even store them on a bookshelf, it's far better to have a hardbound book than a paperback book, because paperback books are prone to spine bending and things like that. Not that that can't happen with hardback books, because I've seen it happen to hardback books. It just takes a whole lot longer and it's a whole lot more of a pain to fix. But I don't like spending money on hardback books. Not when, if I just wait a little bit, I can save $5-10 off the cost of a book. And I'm actually, it's more expensive now to buy books. I'm pretty sure there's even a Kindle edition of this book now. Maybe there's not. It's printed in 2001, I think. 2001, 2002, maybe. But kind of getting back on topic. I picked up this book because the cover art was interesting. I read this, the back of the book. And I thought it sounded interesting. And I opened it up and I started reading it right there in the library. And it wasn't one of those, a book where I opened it up. Like this book, this is another one I found through the library. Where I, just kind of open it up and start at the beginning and read the first couple pages, sometimes the first chapter. This book doesn't have chapters. That might be why I didn't stop reading it. Part of why. I like to think it's because I was drawn into it, because I did go out and spend money on it. But the basic idea is that the first page and the first chapter need to really hook the reader. And and I can see how that argument can be made, and I have actually said to people who are thinking of sending their material out for trying to get an agent to look at it, trying to get an editor to look at it, or a publisher to buy it. I have told them that, the first sentence really just pops out at me, or that I think the first chapter is great, and it's even better that it ends with a hook and makes you want to keep reading more. And that really is a skillful way of crafting a chapter. But when you're sitting down to write something, if you have all that weighing on, I need to have a good first sentence. I need to have a good first chapter. I need to have a hook at the end of the chapter to keep people reading. And if you spend all that energy just on that first sentence, what's going to be on that first page of that first chapter, you spend all that energy on that, the quality of your work probably is going to diminish as you continue writing. Or, maybe it's not. Maybe the first chapter is the last thing you write, and it's the last chapter that's going to end up looking like it was written by someone who didn't know what they were doing. And that's not uncommon for people to sit down and write chapters completely out of order or in different orders. I usually, now that I have a little bit more experience trying to write something that fits together cohesively as a novel, I will write the ending first, and then I will write the beginning. And then, if I think it's worth worrying about or spending time writing a first sentence, I will write a first sentence and stick that at the beginning of the chapter. But the reason I say that the first sentence is a trap for writing is not just the amount of energy and time you can waste on it when you can be spending that time and energy to write the book you're trying to write, or the short story you're trying to write, whatever you're trying to write. It's also a trap in that you start with the first sentence of your novel. If you start there with the first sentence, and it is the sentence that is supposed to define your novel and set the tone of the whole story, and you want it to be that, then you have just written yourself into a box. And it might not occur to you right away, and you might not have any trouble with it until you get to maybe the midway point or the end point of your story, and you want to do something different, and you realize that you can't because that sentence in your mind sets the tone of the story and defines the whole novel. So no, Romeo and Juliet can't they can't run away from home and elope in Vegas, because the story takes place entirely in Verona or whatever. That's a really, really messed up example. I couldn't come up with a better one on the fly, though. But yeah, so, okay, like, for example, with what I've written, I wrote a novel for NaNoWriMo last year. I started to anyway, I didn't finish it. I didn't finish NaNoWriMo, I didn't finish the story. I dropped out with 2 days left on the clock. Because I had finals that I needed to study for, and there was no way I was going to finish the book and study finals, or study for finals before, or there was no way I was going to finish the book before November 30th, and still be on top of things enough to study for my finals. And on top of that, I was just so burnt out, and I'll talk about that some other time. This is going to be a really long, rambly video as it is. Where did I? Here it is. Maybe not. What did I think this is it. Yeah, at one point I resorted to the table of contents to beef up my word count. Anyway, the first sentence. From the beginning, Cooper was always there. The first sentence. First paragraph. I think this is where I really ripped myself into a box. She wouldn't realize this until much later, but it was true. On the other hand, Cooper himself realized this as things were happening, and couldn't help but wonder, if I hadn't been there, would this have even happened? Was this all my fault? It was something he would have to deal with later. So, yeah, that was my first sentence, and it was... that is the box that I wrote myself into. He's done something that created a huge... I'm just going to say clusterfuck, because I don't really know how else to describe it. It's early. Words fail me at this point. You can probably tell I sound really nasally and congested, and that's because I sleep on my back and snore all night. It'll go away the more I'm vertical and the more I'm talking. Oh, right. But that, that was the box that I wrote myself into with that clusterfuck, because it was all pinned on Cooper, and it was all Cooper's fault. It was his fault that his best friend got dragged into in the middle of a zombie apocalypse, and it was his fault that she got dragged into, or it was his fault that she was terrorized by the spirit, the ghost of a necromancer, and it was actually his fault that the zombies were even around. That's entirely different. If I ever publish this, you guys can read it. Otherwise, I'm not going to talk about the story because it's so it's not good. And writing at the pace I was writing, I can't expect it to be good. And it's not supposed to be good anyway. It's a rough draft. It wasn't a total waste, though. I got a lot of really good usable material from it, and I did get experience from the experience. But I was thinking, going along with this this discussion on first sentences, because the first sentence doesn't really, as far as I know, I don't think the first sentence has defined a whole lot of novels or stories that I've read, and I could be wrong. I may reread some of these books later on and think, oh yeah, that does kind of define the story, or in a way. I mean, certainly when you open up A Christmas Carol and the first thing you read is, to begin with, Marley was dead, you don't expect a story about Ebenezer Scrooge and Bob Cratchit. I don't remember his name. That's sad. But you don't remember, you don't expect a story about Scrooge and Cratchit, or Scrooge redeeming himself. You expect, well, I personally would expect to read a story about Jacob Marley and how he died. Of course, at this point, you might, well, you know what to expect from A Christmas Carol now, because it's had such a big I don't want to say a big impact on our culture, but it's become a Christmas tradition for many people to read the story, and a Christmas tradition for movies to be made of the story, and then a television tradition, or a tradition in the television industry to broadcast those movies at Christmas time. So a lot of people know the story, but not too many people have read the book, I think, at least in this generation, or age, or both, I don't know. So there's that, but I'm here. It's been almost 20 minutes now that I've been talking. What I was wanting to do, well, I think I'm going to do now actually, is sit down with a book, and I think maybe we'll start with this book because I've been reading it again, and go over the back cover and any other little tidbits of information they give you about the story. and read the first sentence of the story. So, expect more videos, not as on the topic. I'd probably get one knocked out today before I have to start getting ready for class.